Welcome to Innovation Inside the Box. Drew Boyd teaches teams, businesses, and governments how to solve tough problems to create a culture of innovation and a flowing pipeline. Innovation Inside the Box features structured creativity and innovation strategies for leaders who want to think differently, be more innovative, implement change, and grow. The conversations you'll hear will help you apply innovation methods to services and processes, overcome resistance to ideas, and create a culture of innovation. Here's your host, Drew Boyd.
I'm willing to bet you've heard that old adage that less is more. You know, we hear this all the time from designers and other people that give us the sense that taking things away or reducing the complexity is a good thing. I mean, even Einstein, one of his famous quotes was, "Everything should be as simple as possible." Of course, no simpler. But is it really true? Well, recent research suggests just the opposite, that people don't really believe that we want to add things when we're faced with a situation. We tend to prefer a more additive approach, according to recent research. So in this episode, let me explain the background of this research and what it means for you day in and day out if you want to be a better thinker and more creative. Professor Gabrielle Adams and her colleagues from the University of Virginia published a study just recently in the prestigious journal called Nature. The title of the article is "People Systematically Overlook Subtractive Changes." And that is somewhat of a surprise to people because of all this advice we get to minimize things and take things away and reduce complexity. No, what their studies and a series of studies, what they found is that when faced with situations, people default to a more additive approach. And let me quote some of the things from the abstract of this article. People typically consider a limited number of promising ideas in order to manage the cognitive burden of searching through all possible ideas. And this can lead them to accept adequate solutions, but without considering better solutions. In other words, we tend to go for the first thing that satisfies our problem. And therefore, we overlook better things that might come from taking away, from transforming through a more subtractive approach. And here's what she says. She says, "Here we show that people systematically default to searching for additive transformations and consequently overlook subtractive transformations." They did a series of 8 experiments. And what they said that defaulting to searches for additive changes may be one reason that people struggle to deal with the overload that we face, overburdened schedules and red tape and everything else that's making our life more complex. And we tend to do it ourselves, right? We face situations, and instead of taking things away, we tend to add. So what does this all mean for you? Well, I think about this issue a lot. When you think about systematic creativity, that's what this podcast is all about, how you improve your creative output no matter where you are on the creativity scale. And if you're a regular listener, you know that we talk a lot about a method here called systematic inventive thinking, or SIT. It's based on 5 patterns that mankind has used for thousands of years. And it turns out that one of those 5 patterns, in fact, is called the subtraction pattern. Subtraction is defined as taking away a core element, right? It's intentionally meant to defeat this natural tendency that we all seem to have to want to add solutions, add things to the situation. And so, yes, it's true. I have seen this situation firsthand just recently, as a matter of fact. And what it was, let me give you the background here. I went out and I purchased a new lawnmower for my home, but not just any old lawnmower. This one is a robotic lawnmower. In other words, it's like the Roomba for your house, but this one now works in your yard. And I've been looking at these for a few years, and I finally decided to go out and get one, and I bought one made by Honda that is the leader, I guess, in this robotic lawnmower field. And I'm really excited about it, but it had to be installed by the dealer that sold me this thing. And when the man came out to install it, he was really stumped. He couldn't figure out how to lay the wire around my yard and capture all the lawn that had to be cut in one continuous loop. And he struggled and he struggled, and I tried to help him, and I brought out, different overlays and maps and views of my yard from above so that he could look at this thing and try to wrap his head around it. And he just couldn't. And finally, I said to him, look, I can see you're struggling with this. And right on the spot, I got the idea. I said, why don't we take some things away from the problem? For example, let's take the driveway out of this situation. It seemed that the driveway was really getting to him, and he just couldn't seem to work around the driveway because of the way it's laid out. And he looked at me like, well, why would we do that? The driveway's still there. He wasn't getting it, right? I was trying to just say, look, let's chunk this down a little bit. Let's take this and simplify so you can solve a simpler version of it. Then we'll bring the driveway back in and see if we can work around just the driveway. Well, that's exactly what we did. And lo and behold, he was able to solve the problem. And it was a good lesson for me. And I do this for a living, right? But I thought about it just on the spot. And this was also tied very much to what's in this new article about subtractive changes. And so what this means for you in practice is this. When you're faced with a situation, it could be a problem that you're facing. It could be something you want to improve. It could be going into a new work activity. Know that you have a natural tendency. We all tend to default to a more additive approach to things. We want to bring more things into the problem. And that is a natural tendency you want to be aware of. It's a bias, right? We tend to do it. And truth is that we probably do it because in a lot of situations it works out just fine. It's probably good enough. And I think that's the point of these researchers and their studies that show that, hey, we could probably amp up our game a little bit if we recognize this tendency, this additive bias that we have, and we widen our search a little bit and just throw some subtractive ideas into the problem. So, for example, let's say you're going into a new committee and you're working on a project to improve something about, the customer experience. Let's say you work in a marketing group and you walk into this situation with some colleagues, and what you're tending to want to do, I bet, is this. You and your colleagues have to watch out that you're probably going to look at the customer experience and say to yourself, well, let's map it out now, the so-called customer journey, and let's look for ways to improve it. Well, right away, what are you going to think about doing? You're probably going to be thinking about ways to bring more value into it. And therein is the danger, right? More, better, value added, right? All these things, all these signals that right away think, let's bring more into the problem. So you start thinking about things like, well, let's improve this. Let's make this, when they walk into the store, we're going to hand them something, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. More do, add, bring more value. And that will fall right into this trap, right? You're going to fall right into making this more complex, more rich. And all this research is suggesting, and I'm suggesting too, is that, to add more value to your thinking, there we go, add value, to give yourself maybe a better look at this, also think about some subtractive changes. So look at the sequence of steps that the customer goes through and say, hey, what if we took this step away? What if we completely eliminated it? And look at what we have. Or what if we reduced the amount of time a customer spends at each step by half? And arbitrarily look at ways to cut things out of that experience and see what it does for you. I think this could also apply in your personal life. We hear things about organizing your closets and clean out, your garage and simplify. Well, I think that's different. I don't really think that's necessarily creative. What I'm suggesting is, you think about a family vacation. My wife and I are planning something with some friends to go over to Europe. Once the pandemic now has settled down somewhat, we want to get back and see the beautiful sights that there are to see in Europe. And we have something planned for France, and we're excited about it. But, as I'm thinking about that, the typical approach to work with our tour operator is to, add things to see, right? And now I'm starting to think, what if we just did one thing, to go over there and just do one thing, take in one area and do it for, 10 days and stay in one site. And I think, my wife's head would explode if she were to hear that out of my mouth. And she tends to be a person who wants to wander and see other things, and that would be my nature too. But as a way to add more ideas to our opportunities, more things to consider, all I'm suggesting is that maybe it's time that we just take a few things away too, to see if it gives us a new look. Now, in terms of creativity, of course, the SIT technique known as subtraction will help you do this. What subtraction, though, does is not so much about taking something away to simplify. In fact, to use it properly, we like to have you take something away that's really essential, to really kind of mess up your situation, to take something away so essential that you probably didn't think it could live without it. And that's what really has a tendency to break cognitive fixedness. It's not just about giving you more opportunities to consider. It's about really rocking the world for you and letting you see new opportunities that you wouldn't have considered before. And this is a powerful technique, no doubt about it. And now, reading this research, I realize its power is even greater than what I thought, because of this natural tendency of humans to lean into any problem with a more additive mindset. So, to summarize, new research shows that people systematically overlook subtractive changes, and you don't want to do that. If you want to be a better thinker, widen your field, look at both the additive things into the problem, but then take some time to bring in some subtractive things to the problem, take things away, give yourself more options. Your decision making and your creative output is going to improve.